Welcome to Conversations in Mind. This is a space for conscious inquiry, where metaphysics, new thought, and the science of mind meet real life. In a world calling for deeper awareness, we explore the nature of consciousness, the power of thought, and the presence of spirit moving through everyday experience. And now, here are your hosts, Barb Bue and Mark Gilbert.
So what if your mind is more than just a collection of thoughts? What if it's the gateway to a whole new way of living? I want to welcome you to Conversations in Mind. I'm Barb Bue, and I'm joined by my good friend and fellow minister, Mark Gilbert. And we are here to try to demystify the study of new thought and dive deep into the science and soul of consciousness. So whether you're a longtime seeker or just curious about the power of your own perspective, or for whatever question that you might be bringing into life right now, let's get into the mind. Hi, Mark.
Hey, Barb. Great to be with you today, and great to be kicking off this series with you.
I know. I'm so excited. This is episode 1, everybody.
Yeah, and as we're talking about new thought and mind, we thought, well, we should jump right into a somewhat essential topic, and that is the background on what is mind. And what is it by this thing that we think is mind? And we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about that. And I think maybe we should acknowledge at the outset, Barb, that when people hear the word mind, they come in with sort of a common vernacular understanding. There is a common understanding of mind that I know I had when I approached these teachings. When I first found the science of mind, I sort of plugged into that word mind in that title the common meaning of the word of mind, which is what most of us think about. We think about this aspect of our conscious awareness that we carry around, and we think it's located somewhere in these skulls. And it's
the brain version of it all.
Yeah, and that's our, and we have that sense of awareness and conscious intentions and desires and movement through life, and this body of stuff that we think is ourself, and all that awareness that we have that we label as me is what we tend to think of as mind. And I think that most people, when they hear that term, that's probably what they think. What do you think?
I think that's true. And I think of mind as this playground of energy that is in and through all things. I'm probably kind of a Jedi in a way, like, and we all see this and we've experienced this, we know this. But I also really, over time, come to understand that mind probably lives more in our heart than in our brain. And so I think that in this program, this series of things that we're creating, there will be a lot of conversation about neuroscience and how our brains are working and how we can change our thought patterns. But our thought is different from our mind. And I think it takes sometimes a while to get to that. Some people naturally come from there. I had to get to that. Like, I had to think about things a lot before then recognizing that really when I'm trying to change my mind, I'm trying to change my heart and my belief and my feeling, So I hope to explore all sides of mind in those ways. And and I don't think I also don't think that any of us really knows the answer to this question.
Right. Yeah, and when I really approach science of mind, I would read the words and I would plug in my thought about mind. So when I would hear Ernest Holmes or any other new thought teacher talk about it and use the word mind, initially I did not, and you were ahead of me because if you took it to heart, you were taking it much deeper than I was. I was looking at it from that limited understanding of mind, of that thing that I'm carrying around in my skull. And it was only through time and experience and talking with people and having aha moments that I was, that's not exactly what he's talking about. That's not exactly what they're referencing here. So sometimes it's like the word God. That God in New Thought and in many mystical traditions has a different meaning than God in the sort of old style God Sky, Sistine Chapel,
That's
old
right.
man. And so mind is the same sort of word for me. Now, when people use the word mind, I almost have to say, well, describe what you mean by mind, so make sure we're talking about the same thing.
Yeah, I have to say, I'm not sure that I completely started that way, but I also think that that's part of the reason that science of mind itself gets this rap that it's all heady, that it's
Mhm.
all about thinking, 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 and not about feeling, and not about love and heart. And it's actually all of those things,
Yes.
and it does take some time to get to that place. And everything's a continuum, right? Like we're all on the continuum all the time. And for many of us, we process new experiences first through our mind, unless they are like awe-filled experiences, and then often we can move past this and get to this
Mhm.
in a much quicker way. But um but I think it's all of that. It's all of it, right? Like
Yeah.
we got to think about things sometimes, but we also get to have these other experiences, and we can consciously move from one place to the other if we choose to do so.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for a challenge for me is that I was always talking with people who came from a scientific background, and they would apply the scientific understanding of the word mind. And we have to acknowledge that there's a lot of people who have a materialistic viewpoint of life. They think that everything is matter, physical matter, and that what we experience and call mind or consciousness is simply a byproduct of our evolutionary process of the development of the human form that allowed us to develop these large brains with neurons that have as an epiphenomenon, a byproduct of this evolutionary arc. There is something within humans that we carry out around as conscious awareness, and that's what most materialistic scientific people would call mind. And even in the realm of the people who are studying the mind and psychology, they oftentimes will refer to mind and brain synonymously. And so, what we have to start out at the outset for people who are looking at mind from a science of mind perspective is to recognize that there's some critical differences in science of mind than from the materialistic standpoint. Physical matter, a physical material person says everything is matter that's evolved into higher level forms. Science of mind says everything is consciousness or mind with a capital M that has developed into this universe as an expression of consciousness or mind or spirit. So, what is the ground of all being? On the one hand, science says matter, science of mind says consciousness or mind. So, when we're talking about science of mind with a capital M, we're talking about the ground of all being of this universe or God or spirit. In fact, Ernest Holmes, founder of the philosophy, used spirit and mind in its conscious forms as synonymous. So we have to make that sort of distinction. And so that when we then look at and talk as we're going to about using the power of mind, well, it makes more sense when we understand that everything is embedded with consciousness and consciousness is flowing through all, than rather a materialistic standpoint. And you're saying, well, how do I, me, as a separate individual, use my mind to be creative when I'm just separate from everything? So there's this flipping that we have to start off with and recognize that mind has a different meaning and connotation in science of mind than it does from a materialistic standpoint.
Absolutely. And I think we also got caught for a long time in this cycle of creation of things, in using our mind to make our lives better, using our thought to create. That there was this idea for a very, very long time, and still exists, that that we're constantly creating, which is true. However, we turned it into the creation of things and material things, and so we got caught in the material loop in many, many ways.
Mm-hmm.
you know and I think that there's a shift going on in the universe, in this country, and everywhere, where there is a greater focus on the creation of peace, and the creation of kindness, and the creation of compassion, and interestingly, and this is probably a whole show topic for the future, like our default settings are not always for those things. Our default settings are not necessarily, oh, compassion and kindness. Our default settings are fear and protection, and until we learn these other things. And so there's just this interesting continuum of how we use our conscious mind, not our brain, but our conscious mind to tap into that energy and that field of awareness that is greater than ourselves, and use it, but not abuse it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Did that
No,
make sense?
it makes perfect sense. And I want to arc back to a point you made a second ago, which was about the fact that we tend to, in New Thought and in Science of Mind, tend to emphasize the materialistic creation process of Science of Mind, of using it as a means of getting goodies, wealth, and stuff. And
Parking places.
parking places, yeah. And as much as I enjoyed the movie The Secret, which came out many years ago, and many people in New Thought loved the fact that this book and movie focused on the law of attraction and the power of the mind, my biggest criticism of that movie and many other teachings along that line of the law of attraction is how to use the law of attraction to create stuff in your life. But I've got to add that this question really has come up to me in the last number of years as as you well know, I'm sort of historian of Ernest Holmes and have access to a lot of Ernest Holmes material, and I've been going through it for years as a student of his. And in his Sunday talks and messages and radio shows that he did in the 1950s, his basic impetus was he had the spiritual flavor and the metaphysical aspects to it. The mystical aspects were downplayed, and up front in his message was the power. There's a power for good in the universe, and you can use it. Was a statement that was always made in his radio shows.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea being that you can use this power, and when they talked about how to use this power, oftentimes the emphasis was on jobs, relationships, money,
houses,
houses, stuff. And I think that they're meeting people where they are. I think that many times a spiritual philosophy, and New Thought is no different from a lot of other spiritual philosophies, is that you look at where are the needs and desires and motivations of your potential audience out there. And although you and I can say that ultimately these tools are to be used for the uplifting of your consciousness and your awareness of non-duality and transcending human form and recognizing your spiritual oneness, if your mindset is still stuck in the world of form and matter, and you still see yourself as trying to accumulate the toys, you have that whoever dies with the most toys mentality, wins thing. You're going to see this as a mechanism for attracting toys. But I think people who really come into the philosophy and stay with it and go deeper with it recognize and start sensing that deeper metaphysical aspect to it.
Yeah, and it seems like even a lot of us experience times in our life where like we get all into the toys and then the toys kind of go away, and then we're really left with a deeper understanding. And part of that too, I think, and I think one of the things where we missed something was that we forgot that a rising tide floats all boats, right? And that's the way it's supposed to work. And we got very into the individual materialism and the individual. And I was in a group setting recently, and people were talking about the parking. We always say we manifest parking places really easily. And somebody said, yeah, parking spaces for everybody, because there's parking spaces for everybody. And I was like, yes, that's it. And so when we talk about, and I think even Ernest Holmes, when he was saying things, there's a power for good in this universe and you can use it. It wasn't supposed to be about use it all for you.
Right.
And use it and think that it can only be you, or that your pie has to be bigger than everybody else's pie, or that if somebody else gets a piece of pie, you're going to get a smaller piece. Like, that's not how it works, really. And I think that we're in a big transformation in the United States around that, like a deeper understanding of shared resources and bringing about prosperity for everyone brings prosperity for everyone.
Right.
In
I
any
think
village, in any village, if everyone's doing well, everyone does better, right? Like it's just, and I think we've just gone from here to here, didn't we? This is
well,
why I love talking with you.
one thing you brought up is the sense that where we are in the country currently, that we're going through sort of a breakdown for a breakthrough, that we're recognizing that the old ways of materialistic competition and trying to gather more for ourselves at the expense of others is a limited thinking about the abundance that is currently available in the universe, that's available for everybody. And so as long as this abundance is there, but some are trying to grab all theirs and accumulate it all at the expense of other people, what that points out is a fallacy in our thinking. It's not a limitation in what's available to us. It's a limitation in how we look at life. Yes. And I think that sometimes, when you mentioned a minute ago that when we sometimes we gather material stuff and then it goes away, sometimes we have those challenges in our individual life, just like I think the collective life is going through. So that a lot of times when we feel like, oh, gee, I used to have stuff, but now that stuff is gone and I can't seem to, everything is going to, hell in a handbasket. What we don't often recognize is that's the beautiful way in which this universe works, to conspire to bring us to the next teaching moment for us to learn the next step in where we're supposed to be. So the release of that material is to allow us to grow so we can recognize the next level of what we're really trying to use the power of mind for.
Yes. And in most cases, let's be real, in most cases, that whole I've lost everything, it's going to hell in a hand, that's just not true.
Right.
And we create, speaking of mind, we create so much noise in our own heads. And I'm not speaking from experience or anything like that, of course, about creating a lot of noise in our own heads about what might be lacking or what might be limited or what might. If we can move past that and open to parking spaces for everyone, then it just opens this door it reopens the door to the vastness of possibility and the vastness of this universe and the vastness of what is available to us all. If we can create a vision for a life that works for all, instead of just a life that works for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, Barbie, why don't we take just a moment and sort of summarize what we think, or how we would describe mind and the concept of science of mind, and then maybe we'll take a short break and then come back and talk about how we can use that mind. So how would you describe mind in your most poetic and beautiful way?
I would say it's still kind of how I started this conversation. I think of mind as the heartbeat of everything. Mind is really the heart of everything, and it is the energy and the good, really, that flows in and around and through everything that exists. You, me, this computer, the trees outside my window, it's those moments when we soften our gaze a little bit and you can kind of see energy. I'm going to sound so woo-woo right now. But in those moments when you can soften your gaze and you can kind of see energy move off of a tree, for instance, because everything has a living heartbeat. I think that is what is mind. When we tap into mind, we're tapping into this vast experience and knowledge of the entire collective universe that kind of just floats right here and waits for us to rise up into it. You probably have a better answer.
No.
With less woo.
I love how you described it. That's beautiful. And sometimes different perspectives on the description can paint a more complete picture. Yeah. For me, mind is, I'm going to use some of the same words. It is an energy. It is a flow. Mind is like energetic and intelligent flow of energy that permeates and gives the ground of all existence of everything that exists, both material and non-material. So that everything that we can point to or feel or sense consists of mind. And that mind exists in a non-form state, in sort of a liquid state, when it's beyond the world of material stuff. And that mind also exists in a temporary, semi-permanent state in form as this material world. So that the bookshelves behind me, the wall behind you, the picture on your wall, all of that, including ourselves, are mind. Again, a flowing energy that contains intelligence, and I would say other characteristics, a sense of wanting to know itself, to grow, to evolve, to express itself in a creative way. So there is this continuous energetic flow that has a degree of intelligence to it. And it expresses in a way that we most readily recognize is in that conscious awareness that we talk about in our skulls. So that you and I can say, I'm Mark, you can feel like you're Barb, the listeners can feel like whoever they are. That is the point of their intersection or recognition of their use of mind and consciousness, is in that conscious aspect. But it's not, here's the key thing, is it's not localized simply in our skulls. It's everywhere. It's like we're floating in the ocean, and the ocean is mind.
I love that. I love that.
You know, one of the things we're hoping to do here with these programs too is to support the New Thought Media Network, who's the host of the programs. We would encourage you, if you're enjoying this conversation, that you would support them as well. Let's listen to this brief message, and then Barb and I will come back with
click the like button while you're at it.
Yes, click that like button.
Click the
We
like
hope
button.
you're enjoying Conversations in Mind. This program is made possible by the New Thought Media Network, a nonprofit that's supporting conscious, spiritual media. If you'd like to support this work, just scan the QR code to make a donation. It lets the network know you like this show and helps them to continue bringing you this type of content. You can also go to ntmedia.org and click on Donate. Thank you for being part of the conversation. Now, back to the show.
So thank you for your support and all that. You know, like we said, the rising tide floats all boats, right? And get a little rising tide going for New Thought Media. But let's talk about this though. Let me just ask you this. So, you know, one of the awarenesses that came to me, I remember through many years ago, when in thinking about mind and thought and creation and all those things, is that when we are formed, human beings are formed in the womb, we don't have a brain for a really long time. We have a heartbeat, and we have the energy that comes from that. And in that is the knowledge to create life, this form of life that will become this child. So all of that thinking that needs to happen happens way before we have a brain. And I think that we have turned our brains into this like separate mechanism that means that when we're thinking, we're not supposed to be feeling, or that our thoughts are not feelings, and you know what I'm saying? And that part of this evolution of thought, and evolution of new thought, and evolution of who we are as human beings on this planet is really becoming recentered in this idea of our heart being a generator of thought and of being. And I recently learned that the energy in our brains, like you could measure, you measure energy around your body, that the energy of your brain, it's very strong. It goes out like 3 feet, but the energy of our hearts goes out more like 15, which is an amazing idea of the impact that we have on people when we're focused there instead. And I think it's all part of the scene. I think that it's all mind, right? So when we get into this separation of our hearts and our minds, that's a false equation in a way. It's probably not the right phrase, false equation, but it's a false idea that our minds are separate from our hearts. That's what I guess I'm trying to say, is that we're not really separated that way.
Yeah, one of the interesting things about science of mind is it starts with the assumption that there is a oneness. Everything is interconnected. And then we go on and start dividing things up from there.
Yes.
And
That's it.
and most of our conversations and thoughts and ideas are in a subject-object kind of division. And so we continue to say, well, yes, we are all one, and it's all oneness, and it's all God, and it's all mind, it's all spirit. But then we have objective mind and subjective mind. Then we have a teaching symbol that has 3 parts to it.
And we have thought creates.
Yeah.
Thought is all here.
Yeah. And it's new thoughts. It's the same as what the Zen people talk about when they say, don't focus on the finger pointing at the moon, focus on the moon. The moon is the experience. The moon is the oneness. The moon is the truth. But we can argue about the finger. So we argue about the finger.
That's a whole other train of thought. Right?
Yeah. The point is, when we say, is it the head or the heart? Or, and I've done this. I know you and I've taught classes, and it's all about moving from the head to the heart. It's trying to get out of the intellect and to get in the feeling aspect. I think that is valid from a teaching perspective for people who are so much in their logical brains, where they see, if you're a materialistic person, dividing things into left and right, up and down, and I tend to think that way a lot. But you really need to flow. If you're leaving a lot of the universe unexplored when you do that. If you stay in the heady descriptions and the definitions without getting into the practical application and the feeling, then you've got a whole side of life that's unexplored to you. One of the biggest unexplored areas, I think, for many people in modern times, and I see this in a lot of friends of mine that we get into conversations, and I'm talking my non-spiritual friends, who think I'm the woo-woo guy. And it becomes apparent to me in our conversation that their mindset is that they only see the material world. And they don't see, or they're not open to, the fact that there is a non-material aspect to reality, to the universe. And when they do that, they've closed themselves out to all of the potential possibilities of wisdom and learning that transcends the human, the physical. So, yes, go ahead.
Well, no, I think that, we all want things to make sense, especially when we're young. Spiritually young, however you want to look at it. We want things to make sense. And so if we can create a material box for everything, we can line up the boxes and think that we have made sense of the world in some way. And when you move out of that, it opens to me what feels like mystery and wonder, but can feel really scary when you don't know what makes sense or and we all flip in and out of this, right? I've certainly had moments even in this last couple of years where you flip into this space of fear because you can't make things line up logically in a way that makes sense, and you have to trust, and you have to have some wonder and awe and deal with the fear that comes with some of that. And fear wants to pull us back into that very material realm all the time. And I think that's part of what's happening with the difficulty in the US right now, particularly, is it has a lot of us afraid. And then we get into our reptile brain when we're afraid. And it's very hard to move out of that and be in an expansive place of, okay, something greater is taking place here. And how can I be aligned with that? And deal with my fear, but be aligned with that, and deal with my fear, but be aligned with that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mentioned talking to my friends and posing that question. And if they're open to the fact that there's a non-material realm, it opens them to thinking about that, and we can have a dialogue around that. But if they say, no, there's nothing but physical matter, then that's one of those agree to disagree kind of moments. Right. Because my personal experience has been that this vast universe is so mysterious and wonderful and has a non-material aspect to it that I taste and feel and sense every day. And people I think if anybody stops and thinks about it and feels into their sense of consciousness and lets go of the sense that their consciousness is a byproduct of the firings of their brain, then they can feel and taste that non-material essence and realize the vastness of the universe. But back to your question about head and heart, there's everything that in us. We like to control things, and we want to divide stuff up so we can put them in little boxes like you're talking about. And now we got a label for it, and now we understand it, and we got this logical thing going on. Science and rational thought is great at dividing things into smaller and smaller pieces. But what it often doesn't do well, but it does do it if people look at the right aspects of it, is to build those pieces back up. And it's almost like that hero's journey where you got to go out and divide up and feel muck in the muck for a while, and then come back and know it at a different level.
Right.
And it's the same thing with science. You have to divide the world up into stuff, head and heart and whatever, and then come back and put it back together and say, now I get it at a level I didn't get before.
It is our human nature to have to do things the hard way most of the time. I don't understand that. I do notice that it seems like young people are coming into the world understanding more of this at a cellular level, which, I already believed that we live multiple lives, but now I really believe we live multiple lives. And I think we're witnessing that in young people when it's encouraged in them and not squashed out in any way. Like there is a kindness in young people right now, and a greater interest in what I call shared resource models, but a greater interest in community and the well-being of community than there is in getting rich and stomping all over everyone. And that's very interesting. That seems to be coming from. I think kids are more nurtured now, but in a lot more kids are more nurtured now, it seems like. But I'm finding it interesting that like their nature is leaning more towards kindness in a different way than ours was when we were younger.
I would agree with you. I've got grandchildren, and I think, they are so much brighter and smarter and caring than, and just automatically. And I see that in their friends as well. And so I would agree with you. And, there was the concept many years ago back about indigo children and the birth of these new people who are coming on the planet who are higher levels of consciousness. And I do believe, and this is probably a bigger topic than we have time for today, but just this whole idea that there is a waxing and waning or shifting of the pendulum back and forth through the evolution of humanity, that different people come in at the right time to give whatever is needed for that epoch, so that they bring forth the challenges and the wisdom that are needed, the good and the bad, for whatever is needed for what's next for human evolution's growth. Barb, I do think we wanted to spend a little bit about time talking about, if we have mind, how do we use this power of mind? How do we actually direct it? Maybe we can spend just a few minutes getting into that. How do we use this mind to create there's power for good in the universe and you can use it? How do you use this power to?
Well, God, that's so interesting, because I have to say that my teaching / learning / teaching on this probably has shifted a lot in the last few years. I was very clear for a very long time about the creation of more abundance in our lives, and in many ways, not just about money, but often money is a big indicator of those things, right? And so I taught a lot of the treat and move your feet, pray and hustle, create a vision and then work, and I think that now, as I step back into teaching, I am a lot more about create a vision and allow things to unfold, take steps that are necessary, but also minus some of the intense hustle. I think that we have, and this is a whole other thing, so I'll just briefly say this. We have bought into a way of life in the United States that's not sustainable or healthy for our minds or our bodies or for the planet. And so I've really, in my way of being, pulled back from that. But also I talk a lot more about what's really important. Like, first of all, like we think often, and when we're struggling, this is really true and hard, that money will solve everything, and it doesn't. And it solves some things, and it's necessary, and it solves a lot of things if you're really struggling about it. And I don't want to take anything away from anyone's struggle about it by any means. I think that some of our teaching was incredibly privileged. That's a whole other show topic too, coming out of the 50s especially. But so to me, like, this idea of using our mind to create is much more now about how can I improve the lives of others, and therefore improve my own life, without that being the first and foremost. Does that make
No,
sense?
it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
And it's sort of I would put it as an advanced topic over a newbie coming in. And not necessarily does it has to be that way, but I do say that there are certain techniques and things that we teach in Science of Mind that probably need to be the groundwork for. I'm going to come back to what you just said, because I have a thought on that. But I think at the very intro level, when a person comes in, we have to at least talk to them about the fact that your thoughts have a creative power.
Oh, yeah.
They are a movement through this field of mind, that when you think, you are setting in motion a field of this mind that is continuously flowing through you. Again, use an ocean metaphor to imagine the ocean is moving through and as you think, you're putting those thoughts into the motion of the ocean, and that they are then manifested in ways. And there are ways in which there are things that can impact that thinking. And that's the tools and techniques of Science of Mind get at the practicalities of that. So affirmations, affirmative mind treatment, aligning your thoughts with your actions, being consistent in it, making the distinction between conscious thoughts and the subjective mind, which is all these are we should probably do a show on Science of Mind creation techniques, because it's more than we can do today. But I do want to address what you just said, is that once somebody gets these ideas that I'm consciously creating my life and that I'm flowing, that you evolve. And you evolve to where you first think about the material creation, and then you transcend that, because you're growing spiritually. And you're growing to recognize that what I'm doing with the power of my thinking is not to create something for this separate entity Mark so we can have stuff, but that the creation is for this universe and the fullest expression of this universe. Yes. And so it's a breaking down of the boundaries of separation between myself and you and the rest of this universe, and recognizing that it's this little pocket of consciousness. I have the ability to put into the ocean a flow of energy that is assisting and manifesting the greatest possibilities for this world, for everybody to not only to survive, but to thrive at the highest level of who they can be. And so that's what I think you're getting at in your description, because you're jumping to where I think the end game is in it. And the end game is letting go of manifestation for Barb, but creating manifestation for all.
Parking spaces for everybody.
Exactly.
And I want to be clear about something though, Mark. I think this is really important. It is really easy for me to talk about this from a place where I am not hungry, and I'm not looking for a place to live, and I'm not worried about feeding my kids. I think that there is a level in this that where we have to be aware when we're teaching now, which I don't know that I was for a long when in my earlier days, 20 years ago, that when we're teaching these things, that there is a base level of material need that has to be satisfied before any of this makes sense, or can even be focused on. Because if you're hungry and you cannot deal with, you don't know where your next meal is coming from, that's all you can think about.
Yeah.
And I want to be clear that we understand that and have compassion about that, and that we're not taking anything away from anyone who's in that loop right now, other than that we're sending our love and our care and our prayers, and knowing that there is a greater expression in the world for you also.
Yeah. Well said. I think that what we would both acknowledge is that using like Maslow's hierarchy of needs as a physiological up to the most highest spiritual transcendent needs, is that if those lower needs are not met, although these tools can be an assistance in the meeting of those needs, to talk about transcendence and higher level needs while you're facing day-to-day bills and children and hunger and whatever, seems fairly callous.
And I want to acknowledge that that's not how we're feeling about any of that.
Right. That's an excellent point.
Yeah. I mean, there are places in life that are sometimes hard, and while it's easy to sit and be the guru on the hill and go, well, if you just think about that differently, dinner will come to you. That's, I'll try not to swear on this show. That's BS, and then it's incumbent on those, the rest of us I forgot to lock my cat out. This is Gracie.
We came to say it's time to end the show.
Gracie likes to be involved. Then that's where it's incumbent on the rest of us to be thinking parking spaces for all, and to be holding the energy of good for all and the energy of enough for everyone, and then looking and working at solutions that include that.
Yeah. Well said. Yeah. So this conversation's been quite interesting, and I think we've set the table for a lot of other ideas as well.
Oh, people are going to log into this and be like, well, what train are they going to get on today?
And I've also generated a lot of mind thoughts here for me, for the thoughts we might consider for future conversations. So
absolutely. So thank you, Mark. Thank you for playing in this, and thank you, those of you who are listening, for taking the time to hear what we have to say, and would love to hear your feedback or your comments or even questions for our next go around.
And be sure to like and donate.
Donate to the New Thought Media Network, and have a beautiful week.
Yes. Take care. Bye-bye.